You guys, I don't know why I was sleeping on this book. I feel like a dumb ass. It is so good. It's so cute. We basically start out with 3 hot billionaires, yes please, who are all the grandsons of this man who basically invented Dreamland, which it's basically Disneyland. But for the sake of the story, it can't be. It's Dreamland. Their grandfather has just passed away, and at the reading of the will, he gives them all these letters that basically say that he's given each of his grandsons a task to complete before they're able to get their portion of their inheritance of Dreamland. And if they fail this task, then their percentage is going to go to their father, who they hate. So Rowan is the youngest of the brothers, and the way that he connected with his grandfather was he grew up with just a lot of sparkle in his eyes. He was very artistic, whereas his brothers were a little bit more like athletic, if you will. But when their mom died, their dad became an alcoholic and just like a shit dad. So he always put him down for his art, made him feel like he wasn't manly enough or that it just was a useless hobby. And so as he grew up and was so like put down by his dad for his creativity, he kind of lost his dream-like childhood feelings, you know, and became the grumpiest grump. If you like Grumpy Sunshine, this book was just, it was the grumpiest grump and the sunniest of sunshines, and I loved every second of it. So his task from his grandfather in the letter was that he had to assess the park and find out kind of what needed improvements and come up with a project that was basically going to elevate the park. And the grandfather had picked a panel of people that were secret that he had to present to, and it had to be like a unanimous decision basically to approve his project for him to gain his inheritance. Now in comes Zara, our female lead. Now she works for Dreamland, basically in their version of like the Bibbidi Bobbidi Boutique. I cannot remember what it was called in this book, but it's like where parents bring their kids to come get dressed up as like princesses in like the magical castle. And when I tell you, when she comes on the scene and Rowan sees her, he's like, she's gorgeous, stunning, beautiful, and delightful, and happy. So anyway, Zara always had this dream to be on the creator team of Dreamland, who like designs rides, designs lands, like comes up with all the new projects. And she and her boyfriend actually came up with this project, or I think maybe she came up with the project with someone else, but then her boyfriend pitched the idea like it was his own, and then they basically broke up and he stole her idea and he got the job, and she basically hasn't done anything creatively related ever since because it just shot down her confidence and she was really heartbroken after that betrayal. But Rowan is trying to come up with a good idea and a business plan to put together to pitch to the secret team, and so he opens up applications that they do every so often where not just the creator team, but any Dreamland employee can send in an application with like suggestions on like things that they think could use improvements in the park. So Zara one night gets really drunk with her friend and she decides to put in an application because the idea that her ex-boyfriend stole, that he pitched, he didn't really pitch it the way that she would have done it. So she decides to like rip apart that project and resubmit it in the way that she thought would have been better. And so he sees her project and her application and basically hires her right away. He calls her in his office the next day and says, "You're on the creative team, here's your salary bump, you start today." And you basically have no choice. She's like, this is crazy, but also okay. So although she's really good with coming up with these ideas, she's not very artistically talented. And so all of her projects, when they require like visual aids, she has like these stick figure like sketches and they're really embarrassing. And that's basically the only thing that Rowan critiques in these things. He's like, your idea is great, we need to work on your visuals. So he tells her that he has a friend, right, who can help create the visual aids for this. But surprise, the friend is actually himself, but he hasn't sketched or done art for himself or anyone in a really long time. So he doesn't really want her to know that it's him. And once he gives her her project back, she's like, oh, this was so good. Can you please give me your friend's number so that I can say thank you? And so he does, but he gives her like a fake name, and she ends up texting him thinking that he's this other man who did the artwork for her project, basically saying thank you and trying to say like, what can I do to repay you? He's like a billionaire who could want for nothing, right? And she also doesn't have like a lot of money to spare at this point. So she's like, how about I give you my, I can't even remember. It's basically her like streaming platform password. And she's like, you can use my account. Like that could be how I pay you back, which is funny because he actually owns this streaming service. But he's like, you know what? Okay. He wants to know more about her. He's curious. So one thing that I thought was so adorable was that this girl loves Pride and Prejudice. In fact, she has watched multiple times all 17 versions of Pride and Prejudice that they have on film. I didn't know that there were that many. I've seen 3, maybe. Apparently there's 17 of them, and he, to get to know her better, watches all 17 versions of Pride and Prejudice. How cute is that? After I saw that, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna incept my husband into liking Bridgerton, and it worked. I just started playing an episode just like while he was on his computer next to me, and he's like, that's interesting, that's interesting. And now we're almost done with season 1, and he's very invested, so it worked. So he's been really enjoying texting her back and forth, getting to know her under like this false identity. And then one day at the office, she leaves this flyer that has her phone number on it for this, what is it called? It's like a mentorship program that she's trying to head up. And he sees this flyer and doesn't want anyone else having her phone number. So he steals the flyer and then goes to this meeting that she has set up, not realizing that it is like a mentorship program for people with special needs. So her sister has Down syndrome, and she is so hilarious. I love her. I loved her sister so much. For a couple years in high school, I actually used to volunteer for a special needs art class, and the girl who I was paired up with, she had Down syndrome, and she was one of the sweetest, most hilarious people that I've ever met. And it's just like made me think of her the whole time. And so Rowan ends up getting paired with her sister, whose name is Ani, and they develop this very genuine friendship with each other throughout the story. And she was kind of like wingman slash wingwomaning them to like be together, totally trying to Yenta the situation, and I loved it. So Rowan does eventually come clean about the fact that he is this mysterious man that she has been texting, who's like the artist, and she's kind of feels betrayed, but they move past it quickly. They end up kind of getting into a relationship with each other, obviously, because electric chemistry. They can't keep their hands off of each other. Even though he's grumpy and she's delightful, they just, peanut butter and jelly, they go well together. I will tell you, this was not the spiciest book ever, but when the spice was happening, it was good. They kind of decide to keep their relationship like a little bit more casual at first because his brothers and their business is in Chicago, which is not where Dreamland is. And the plan was always that once he finished up his project and got his percentage of the inheritance, that he would go and work for the business with him and his brothers. But the more he gets to know Zara, the more he like kind of wants to head up Dreamland and stay there and be with her and help realize their dreams together. And he's very in love with her at this point, but just like hasn't wanted to tell her. Like they've gone on these adorable billionaire type dates. I won't go into it, but it's cute. So don't ask me why I cannot remember what happened, but she ends up in the hospital for something, and he decides this is going to be the perfect time for me to just leave. Better cut it off now. I gotta go be with my brothers. I don't think this whole staying with her here in Dreamland is gonna work. And he just like pieces out, and she's like, screw you, I thought we had something. She also ends up finding out that she was selected to be on like the board of people that is supposed to approve his project. So she thinks that he only gave her this job and has been buttering her up so that he has better chances of like getting his inheritance, and she thought he played her, which he didn't. But he ends up realizing that he's a dumbass. He comes back with a project idea to basically give better insurance to the employees that are there and to make the park more disabled friendly. The project gets approved even by his dad, who's on the board, and they live happily ever after. 4.5 star, 2.75 chili pepper, read it.